So, Barca lost 2-1 in the first Clásico. It's frustrating, but my goal with this review is to change how you feel about the game and maybe also how you believe in the team going forward. I will break down exactly what went wrong, what we could have done better, and what it means for the rest of Barca's season. Let's just say that Real Madrid deserved their win, but my conclusion towards the end might actually surprise you. Let's get started. Let's start by applying some important context. The rivalry between Barca and Real Madrid has always been balanced, meaning losing is just as normal as winning. In fact, Barca won every single El Clásico last season, which is far more unusual than losing the first one, as we did yesterday. Now, keep in mind, some of these losses for Real Madrid were extremely humiliating, such as the 4-0 and 5-2 loss for them. But what did they do? Well, they bounced back. They're here again, competing at the top. And Barca will do the same. Right now, the most important thing is to understand why we lost so we can make sure it doesn't happen again. Look for areas we can improve. And to me, that reason is quite clear. Unfortunately, it became clear to me that Lamine Yamal was struggling with something. How could I tell? Well, you just have to look at his behavior on the pitch. Normally, when he's at his best, he's never afraid to take on defenders. He doesn't care if it's 1, 2, or even 3. However, against Real Madrid, he was hesitant to go 1v1 against a fullback. And that's when you know something is bothering him. He couldn't fully express himself. Instead, when he received the ball, he would hold on to it, attract pressure from opponents, and then play teammates into space. Since he is such a world-class player, teams usually defend against him with multiple players. And he knew that, so he used that to his advantage. So it wasn't a very bad game from him. It was just one where he couldn't, as I said, fully express himself. This limited our threat in the wide areas. Lamine Yamal is a key component in our attack. Real Madrid, they knew and they quickly realized that he was fatigued or he couldn't sprint properly. And that's why they built a lot on his flank. Lamine Yamal couldn't cover the spaces with the same intensity that is required. I was also quite surprised to see Ferran Torres in the starting lineup. He also just returned from an injury, but Hansi Flick chose to use him as a striker. However, he lacked sharpness in his touches and he couldn't provide what we needed. He was also up against 2 extremely good defenders on the day, but we needed our striker to link play and bring others into various sequences. This became even clearer in the second half, where Real Madrid spent most of the time defending in a back 5. A lot of space appeared in front of that defense, but Ferran wasn't there to get involved. And when he had the ball, he often lost it, and it led to turnovers and transitions for Real Madrid. So there was space to take advantage of, but we didn't have the profile to utilize it. Now, out of 3 attackers, 2 weren't in their best form physically or in terms of rhythm. On top of that, we also missed out on 2 guaranteed starters, which is Rafinha and Lewandowski. At one point in the game, even if Lewandowski would not have started, he would have provided a huge impact, especially when Real Madrid defended deep and we required box threat. Rafinha would have started no matter what, and he would have been important. His elite off-the-ball movements always causes chaos, and especially the one thing that I missed from him was his inside runs. Those runs create passing lanes and allows us to combine on the inside of the defensive structure of teams. There is a reason he's always the one who steps up in the biggest games. He knows where to hurt them. In other words, there was already a clear ceiling to how well we could play due to missing individuals, and that ceiling was lowered even further when we saw Lamine's fitness and Ferran's rhythm. Now, I'm not saying that there isn't anything we could have done. We could have made certain adjustments to improve our performance, which I will go through now. You know how we saw how Lamine Yamal couldn't sprint and take on defenders with his usual confidence? Well, here is where I think Hansi Flick could have been more creative. It comes down to how he understands player roles, player profiles, and maximizing the potential of the team with those exact players on the pitch. To reduce the number of direct 1v1 situations for Lamine Yamal, we could have moved him from a winger position to more of a pure number 10. This would have allowed him to play more in tighter spaces and function as more of a direct playmaker. He certainly has technical quality and intelligence to do so, to function in such a role. That adjustment right there could have opened up new possibilities and new dynamics. For example, by shifting Lamine Yamal to a number 10 position, we could have moved Fermin Lopez to the left side, where he would function as an inside forward. Bolde would then be the overlapping fullback. It's something that suits both. As a striker, Hansi Flick could have chosen either Ferran Torres or Rashford, depending on what he wanted. But most importantly, it's the right side. Having Rashford or Ferran Torres play as right winger would not necessarily have given us more 1v1 threat, but much more running power. The fact that Ferran and Rashford can just sprint down the right flank would stretch Real Madrid and cause constant chaos. With Lamine Yamal's passing abilities and just creativity from central areas, he could be the one to provide passes for them. I think that type of thinking is what the game was missing. We could have gotten more creative in our setup and the way we used to position the profiles on the pitch. Lamine Yamal in particular, even when he struggles, there are still aspects of his game that's so special, but I feel like we could have taken much better advantage of it, rather than just isolate him on the right flank. Towards the end of the second half, we actually saw him in a more free role, and that definitely benefited him. And it also benefited the team, as he played Koundé through on goal for one of the biggest chances for Barca. So maybe a setup like that is something that Hansi Flick could have considered. Real Madrid have world-class players. They were quicker and more decisive than us in the final third. They just felt more energetic than our players. In the first half, they were clearly superior than us in large stretches of the game. However, something happened in the second half. Suddenly, they gave up the initiative, and it felt like a strategic move, but at the same time, a risky one. Barca had about 74% ball possession, which is impressive when you consider the stadium we were playing at, but unfortunately, we couldn't turn that into meaningful chances. Why? For reasons already mentioned. Our attack simply lacked the necessary quality. You can't coach individual brilliance, and that's the main ingredient we were missing yesterday. So Real Madrid impressed me in the first half, but not in the second. Barca obviously had issues and lost the game, but those issues are easy to identify. The main difference was execution and quality. It wasn't that big of a mystery. I would even argue that if we replicated this exact performance, this exact setup, just with our normal players in the starting lineup, we would have had a much bigger chance of winning. Because Real Madrid, they weren't that good. They were good, but they didn't feel unstoppable. At the same time, even if we played Real Madrid from last season, which we beat 4 out of 4 times, with this exact team right here, we would have lost. We would have struggled the same way. Because while there were some tactical issues, the main issue were the player quality and player fitness. This game won't define our season. I fully believe that we can compete for every possible trophy, but it obviously depends on players returning from injuries and regaining form. Congratulations to Real Madrid on their win. They earned it. That has to be said. But next time, things are very likely to be different. In fact, I think that both teams will be better. Not just Barca, there's a lot of room for Real Madrid to grow as well. Very eager to hear what you think, so please make sure to leave a comment below.